Good morning, guests. Good morning, visiting Rotarians. It's always good to have you all with us this morning.
I have to ring the bell again.
I might have to ring the bell. I'm not sure anyone heard the bell. I might have to start that to I'm going to call on Tom Phoenix. Tom, I saw you come in. I just didn't know there you are. Would you lead us in the invocation pledge and the four-way test?
When my dad was alive, he did the blessing at every meeting. So I was thinking about that driving down here today, and I'll just kind of do what he did. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for this fellowship and the time we have together with family and friends. We thank you for all the things you have bestowed upon us that makes life wonderful. Bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies and us to thy service and to the service of others. Amen. Amen. Amen.
To the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Of the things we think, say, and do,
Is this truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
I'm going to call on Christy, Sergeant. Y'all listen up now.
We have 41 guests in attendance, or 41 members in attendance. We have one visiting Rotarian, Richard Needham from Airport. And then Bobby Christensen has a guest. Would you like to introduce your guest?
Stand up. This is my good friend Joe Markley. Known him for many, many years. We've done a lot of running together. He's helped me with some of my long runs. And he only has one speed, full. And he's done 24 states in America. He's got a goal to do a marathon in every state. Wow. He's, hopefully none of you have ever done any business with him. The firm he works for, he's in charge of information technology for the federal bankruptcy court here in Greensboro and Winston, so you had to come across him. But he's got two grown twin sons, and he's a good friend, Joe Martin.
So just a quick reminder, we have a new Sergeant of Arms at the greeting table. So please, when you come in, let Christy know, let her see your badge so she can get to know you easier, and that'll help her out along. Rick Martin, I'm going to call on you next. Do we have any birthdays or anniversaries to recognize?
We do. Thank you, Chip. We have no birthdays, but we got some club anniversaries and some wedding anniversaries. And club anniversaries, Jim Kennedy. I was looking around at Jim. No, he's not here. All right, Jim's 28 years with the club. I started in the beginning, and then has anybody seen Chip Person?
Yes.
Well, there he is right here. Yeah, Mr. Chip. You've got a club anniversary coming up. Actually, it was yesterday, the 15th. How many years, buddy?
15.
You're exactly right.
Perfect
Perfect attendance. All right, let's give the man a hand. All right. Way to go, Chip. And wedding anniversary. Man, everybody must get married in May. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to have time to get through this today, Mr. President. We got Guy. Is Guy here?
Yep.
Yeah. What are you? There he is, right back here. You hit the nail on the head, my man. And what day? Yesterday, yes, sir. And where's Kelly? I don't think I saw Kelly today. Kelly here? He must be celebrating because today's the big day for Kelly and Kelly. All right, Dale Harrell. I know I saw you come in, yes, sir. And that's coming up when?
Day after tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. Way to go. Way to go. 45. Nice. And Michael Hunt.
See him.
Well, also on the 18th, y'all see him. Congratulate him. He and Mary have been married for 23 years and was saved the best for last. Max Kern, did I? No, they'll be celebrating their 40th on the 19th of May. Mr. President, that wraps us up.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Max is rule of 85, so we don't get to see him very often, regretfully, but it's always nice when he is in town. You know, I forgot, or moved pretty quickly on the introductions. Matthew, always good to have Charlotte here. Charlotte, good to see you this morning. And Joe, nice to have you with us. Richard, good to see you again. And announcements. Guy, do you have anything that you want to cover on fundraiser and loose ends? All right, well, you did a great job, and if anyone has anything left to turn in, give it to me. I'll put my figures real quick on that. Reminder, on June 18th, you'll get some emails about this installation banquet for the next district governor, Randy Perkins. That's going to be at the Alamance Country Club. And Matthew, do we have any?
We do. I feel like we stand up every meeting, so it's coming to an end, so everybody will be back. But June 1st, Saturday at 9 o'clock, we're going to go out and we're going to hammer Camp Carefree, what we've been working on there. That's kind of an update. Chiz had a stroke last week, so they're a little disorganized at the moment. We're still going to do the ceiling tile, and Rhonda's going to see what else she can come up with us to do for other fill-ins projects, because that shouldn't take very long. And I really don't want to go up there and spend an hour and come home. I'd rather just half a day, 3/4 of a day. So I'll send out a sign-up genius, and once I know more, I'll let everybody know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping after that with the rain and things that we've had to shuffle around.
Absolutely.
Thank you for following up on that one. And let's see if there's anything else. Any other announcements for the good of the club that I've forgotten and need to be reminded of?
Changing of the guard, when is that?
That is the last Wednesday in June. I believe that is the 26th.
That's called June 26th.
Yes, it is. I'll be sure to show up. I got
That's my anniversary.
Well, with that in mind, I'm going to call on Buster Lewis.
Oh, my God.
How about some happy dollars, Buster?
Oh,
Yeah, happy dollars.
All right, Gail, go ahead, give us a few. Give us all of them.
Okay, is Mike on here? I didn't see him. He's on here. The first one's go, shout out to his daughter. Page 1, that's the next one there. Their playoff game yesterday, we did not expect really to win. We played an undefeated team, multiple college commit soccer players and other sport players, and we won 1-0. So we go on to another playoff game Friday night. So we are very excited about that. But Caroline should get MVP. I mean, she was on fire. So were my girls. So both my girls got to play again together. Victoria's still playing up and is going to ride out this with the varsity team. So that's been very, very exciting. Another one, Rosa, although she could not attend the Junior Guild ceremony last night, was awarded the Spirit of the Guild Award, which is given to the person, it's voted upon by her peers, the person that carries the spirit of volunteering, and through her example, sheds that light and encourages others to want to do so. Then Rosa also came home and said, Mom, I got a job. I'm going to apply to 1,000 villages. Since you won't let me go to Spain this summer, I feel like I'm going to have to get a job, and that'll give me the feeling of still helping and serving and whatever. She's like, did you know they don't pay? All volunteer. That's all I got.
You need to help her define what a job is. Work you can pay. It's like a new job.
All right, I hadn't been here in a while, but I want you to know you're in for a treat today with General Gorham and his famed, hopefully he had to have any stories, but he was my first company commander when I was came back from my RTC, and he was, you're in for a treat, though, just to let you know.
All right. Somebody got some carpet. All right.
He introduced me to his sweet mom, and we're going to do some wood for her, so thanks for the referral.
So my baby girl graduated on Sunday from Chapel Hill, and after a lot of trying to figure out what she was going to do, she has been accepted to Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland to do a master's program. So, unfortunately, it sounds like Susan and I are going to have to go over there.
Like going to Florida.
Things like that.
Well, Wallace starts his first job, he should be there in 28 minutes. We called him 3 times and wanted to know him.
Does it pay?
First real job. I mean, he's worked for the family, he's done this, he's done the first real live paying, work for somebody we're not related to kind of job, right? So he calls last night, I'm just getting in the car from the 505, which is a great turnout, and he says, Dad, he said, I got a problem. I said, did you check the oil in the truck? He said, no, it's not that. I put 4 quarts in. I said, we'll talk about that later. Why did you call? He said, I got a ticket. I said, doing what? He said, 62 and a 45. I said, when? He said, on the way to the plant last night, I wanted to judge it out. And I said, well, so, okay, you're going to lose your license. He said, then I won't be able to drive the pickup truck because they're going to give him a pickup truck. And I said, well, you know, how did you do this, son? I mean, we're just going to have to get a lawyer fight. He said, well, no. I talked to the cop and I explained to him that I had just moved here and everything. And so he wrote me up, it's not for speeding, it's for not wearing my seatbelt. Damn, just get up and show up all the time. And the other one, my daughter is pregnant with the 3rd child. The name should be Dean Edward if everything goes the way it's supposed to.
So I've mentioned to some of y'all the fixer-upper from hell that I picked up about 1.5 years ago, and I finally did about all I could do on it, put it on the market about a month ago, and it went under contract last week, and that's all good. That's all good. I'm kind of excited about that. It went under contract for a purchase over in the British Woods area, and that's all good news, but it was my place was inspected yesterday, and so I'm walking somewhat clenched right now, waiting to see what my buyers do. But it's exciting. I'm finally rid of this thing.
Well, those were good on TV because you get them all fixed up in about 30 minutes.
Well, Buster, just hearing about these repairs and things like that, I always remember what my son Justin told me and my pastor told me when I attempted plumbing one time years ago. He said, it only costs a little more to do it yourself.
Well, Grandpappy, he was talking to one of his buddies, and his buddy said, what do you feed your dog? And Grandpappy said, well, just regular dog food. He said, why? What do you feed yours? He said, collard greens. Grandpappy said, my dog would never eat collard greens. The fellow said, mine wouldn't either for about a month.
I heard Ziegler tell that years and years ago.
This morning, we're going to hear from General Gorham, who's already surmised. There's a book on the back table, and it's Sharecropper's Wisdom, Growing Today's Leaders, the old-fashioned way. He doesn't realize it, but we've been learning about old-fashioned wisdom from Grandpappy Lewis now. Small doses for years and years and years. At any rate, General Gorham is the first African-American Brigadier General of the North Carolina National Guard. Served for 38 years and 12 months in Iraq, I believe. Also, 29 years in financial services.
Good old First Citizens Bank.
And he was the Commissioner of Juvenile Justice of North Carolina. Please welcome General Gorham.
Well, let's go back to the double track, where the work is hard and the boss is mean, where the food is dirty because the cook ain't clean.
Good morning, folks. How y'all doing today? That was the back to work call that my father, the sharecropper that I write about, would give us every day when it was time to go back to those tobacco fields. And so I never forgot that. Thank you for allowing me to be here with you this morning. And I hope I might be able to share some of that sharecropper's wisdom with you that might maybe help you in some form of fashion. I am really thrilled to be here. Thank you, Walt. That's my youngest brother's name too, for inviting me here. And President Chip, thank you also. And for the plug, thank you. But anyway, now I got something to live up to, right? But anyway, I grew up, folks, in eastern North Carolina. My daddy was a sharecropper. And out of all the accolades that has been bestowed upon me in my life, and there have been a few, the one that I cherish the most, the one that I coveted the most, is the fact that I was born to a sharecropper. Nothing tops that in my book, because to me, my father was the greatest man that I ever knew. And because of that, I decided to write a book about him. Now, as I said, I grew up in eastern North Carolina, right? 11 of us in a little 4-room shack with no running water. So when I left home in 1974 to join the United States Army, there was no running water in my house. I was poor. Not poor. Poor. See, poor is one step below poor. And I didn't know just how poor I was until one Saturday afternoon when we had a television. There was a show that came on down east called the Porter Wagoner Show. Anybody remember Porter Wagoner? You gray hairs in here?
I'd be glad to be gray. What are you talking about?
Well, there was a guy that came on his show, and his name was Speck Rose. And Speck Rose used to sing this song, "Do your chewing gum loses its flavor on the bedpost over there." Somebody remember that song, right? Well, if you knew the answer to that song, you was poor too. That's where I put my chewing gum when I had some, right? But like I said, I grew up, and at the age of 18, I decided to join the United States Army. Not because I was the patriotic type. That is not my story. I joined the Army for 2 reasons. 1, to get away from that tobacco field, and 2, to get away from my daddy. Because he was a hard taskmaster. He gave us no breaks. Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock, I exited the tobacco field, and Sunday afternoon, after going to church and Sunday school, I caught that Trailways bus to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And like a lot of young people, you know, who've never been anywhere, never done anything, when I got into the Army and I started making me some soft money, I got down to Fort Hood, Texas, and I got with the wrong crowd. And I started going out and partying. And every night it seemed like we was going out to party, and every night I end up drunk. For about 6 months, I think I stayed drunk about every night. I was on my way to becoming an alcoholic. But the good Lord always had his hands on me. And on Christmas Eve of 1976, at my platoon sergeant's house, I had drank about 3 beers. He's offered me the 4th one. I know if I drink the 4th one, I'm going to drink a 6-pack and I'm going to be drunk again. And a divine intervention from the big guy occurs right in front of my face. The Waltons come on TV. Jim Bob, Mary Ellen, y'all know them folks? I started looking at that show. I got homesick like a big dog. And all of a sudden a feeling came over me that I cannot describe to you. But all of a sudden I did not want that beer no more. So I told my platoon sergeant, I said, "Hey Sarge," I said, "I think I'm just going to go home." He said, "Okay, but be safe." I said, "Roger that." So I left his house, went outside. I got in my 1973 Ford Pinto. The cheapest car on the market, $16.95. You get one absolutely loaded 4-speed, y'all. So I'm driving home to this little hole-in-the-wall apartment that I'm living in at that particular time. And the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life occurs. I'm driving down the road, and I look over on the shoulder of the road, and I see a loaf of bread that has fallen out of somebody's car. And I don't have no bread in my house. Matter of fact, at that particular time in my life, I had 75 cents in my pocket. I had a 4 tank of gas in my car. That's all I had, because I had drunk up the rest of my money. So I pulled that car off to the shoulder of the road. I walked over and I stooped down to pick up that loaf of bread. But when I did, that story that I learned at St. John Baptist Church in Falkland, North Carolina, where I'm from, that story of the prodigal son came to my remembrance. And I said, oh my God, I'm him. I'm out here doing all this stuff I'm big and bad enough to do. My mama and daddy didn't raise me this way. I came to myself. But I grabbed a loaf of bread anyway and went home. And so when I got there for the first time in about 6 or 7 months, I decided to call home because it's Christmas Eve. And all my family's there, my 5 sisters that think the world of me. They're home. My younger brother, my mom and dad. I called and my mom answers the phone. She hears my voice and she says, bruh, that's what they call me back home. Come home. And I said, Mom, I can't. And she said, why not? I said, Mom, I got 75 cents in my pocket, a 4 tank of gas in my car. It's awful hard to get from Fort Hood, Texas to North Carolina with that kind of money. So she said, me and your daddy will wire you some money tomorrow. Come home, you need to be with your family. Now, folks, I'm 20 years old, and I'm doing a whole lot of stupid stuff, right? But I got enough sense to know that I cannot take that proposition from my mama. So I said to her, Mama, I'm taking ownership. I'm manning up. I said, I got myself in a bad situation down here at Fort Hood, Texas. And I got to get myself out. Because if I depend on you and Daddy to bail me out on this time, every time I get in a bad situation, I'm going to be dependent on y'all. And one day, y'all ain't going to be there for me. Then what am I going to do? So I said, Mama, I know her heart was heavy because I know how the relationship between mothers and sons, they like fathers and daughters, you know, very tight. So I said, Mama, just pray for me. When I get out in August, I'm coming home. But until then, I have to stay here and deal with my situation. And so by the grace of God, I got through the holiday period with my sanity intact. First day back on the job at lunchtime, armed only with a gleam in my eye and a desire in my heart. I went down to the community college. I signed up for English. I signed up for math because I knew that education was going to be key to my upward mobility. Right? And so when I did that, I went back to the orderly room. Any military folks in here? I know there's a few. Okay. Y'all know how them first sergeants can be. I'm an old crusty first sergeant. I've been in that unit for 2 years. I am absolutely petrified of this man. I see him go one way, I go the other. I've never spoken to him. But that day I get up enough courage and I go knock on his door. And he comes to the door and he sees my name tag. And he immediately knows who I am. Because I'm on every report he has. The bad one. Late for formation. Boots not shine. Haircut not according to the regulations, right? Because when you're in that state of mind, right, you're not making good decisions. And so I'm on his list. And he looks at me with disgust. And he says, what do you want? I said, I need to talk to you, Top. That's what we call it, First Sergeant. He said, come in my office. What's on your mind? I said, I have a proposition for you. He said, you? Dirtbag. You smack ball. You have a proposition for me? He said, this I gotta hear. He said, what's your proposition? I said, Top, I would pull extra duty every weekend for the rest of the time that I'm in this unit. If you keep my name off that duty roster on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And he said, Gorham, that don't make no sense. If nobody want to pull extra duty on the weekend, and you gonna pull it every weekend? I said, every weekend. He said, when do you ETS? When you get out? I said, August. He says, January. I said, it don't matter. Because see why he did not know. In that little church that I grew up in Eastern North Carolina, the saints in the church used to sing this song. When your heart get fixed, your mind get made up. And then you can go every step of the way. And that's where I was. My heart was fixed. My mind was made up. I didn't care what price I had to pay. I knew I needed an education and I was going to do it. He said, why are you doing this? I said, I'm doing it because I just went down to the community college. I signed up for English and math. They're meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I want to go to all of my classes. He said, you trying to tell me that you're going to pull duty every weekend for 8 months just so you can go to school at night? I said, yes, sir. Esther, you're sorry. And he looked at me like them old sergeants would do, and he said, well, I'll be damned. You got a deal. And I shook my hand, and I went out of his office. But do you know what that first sergeant did for me? He took my name completely off the duty roster. I didn't pull no more duty, extra duty, the whole time I was in that unit. But the question that I ask you today, why? Why did he do that? Because I'm a troublemaker. I'm on all his reports. I think he did what he did for the same reason that many of us that's in this room do what we do with people sometimes. I think that first sergeant saw something in me that at that particular time in my life, I didn't even see in myself. And he said, I know that boy is a troublemaker because I got him on all my reports. But I see something in him that I don't see in those other fellows over there. He's willing to make a sacrifice to get an education. I think I'll give him a little bit of help. This first sergeant don't know to this day that that random act of kindness that he bestowed upon my life helped me to turn my whole life around. And so once that happened, you know, that was the easy part. Now I had to go to the tough part. I had to go confront my so-called friends, the ones that was coming over to my crib all the time, bringing that alcohol and that marijuana. And I told them, I said, fellas, you're welcome to come to my apartment anytime. But from now on, you can't bring that stuff in my house no more. So you know how many came to see me after that, right? 0. They weren't friends. It was just a convenient, I was just a convenient place where they could go and get their little high on, right? And then an amazing thing happened. I started to reflect back. On the things that my daddy used to tell me as he rolled me around in that old raggedy, smoking Silverado pickup truck that I was so ashamed of then, but I'm so proud of now. I started thinking about what he used to tell me. And he would tell me stuff like this. It's in this book. He said, boy, because that's what I thought my name was. He said, boy, you are becoming your company. Whoever you hanging around with, he said, that's what you becoming. So when I graduated from the North Carolina Military Academy down at Fort Bragg as the distinguished honor graduate of my OCS class as a second lieutenant, I started hanging around with first lieutenants. And I became one. Then I started hanging around with them captains, them majors, them lieutenant colonels, and them colonels. Finally, I started hanging around with them generals, and I became the first African-American general in the North Carolina National Guard because that's what my daddy said. Then he said, boy, if you are willing to do what other people will not do, he said, you can go where other people cannot go. So after about a couple of months went by, down at Fort Hood, Texas, the company commander called us all together one day, and he said, we have some problems in our motor pool. He said, there's a lot of nails that's out through our motor pool, and it's causing us to have a lot of flat tires on our vehicles. He said, I would give anybody 2 handfuls of nails. I would have to give anybody a 3-day pass if they bring me 2 handfuls of nails from this motor pool. 120 soldiers heard that challenge. One brought him the 2 handfuls of nails, right? 3 weeks went by, and every time I got a break, I'm out there looking for a nail. And my so-called friend called me everything except for a child of God while I was going through this process. After 3 weeks, right? I'm back knocking on that first sergeant's door. This time, you know, I got on the biggest hat that the Army makes, 7 7/8. Because up under that hat is the biggest afro in the United States Army. I'm talking about one of them Ricky Silvers, Michael Jackson type afros, right? Tight down with stocking caps and some Roy Crown grease. Y'all probably don't know anything about that, but anyway, okay. I'm standing there, I'm knocking on the door. He comes to me, he sees me with the 2 handful of nails, and he calls the company commander. He says, "Sir, you got to come and see this. You're not going to believe this." The company commander comes out, he sees me there with a 2 handful of nails, and he says to the first sergeant, "Don't give him a 3-day pass. Give him a 4-day pass." So at the end of the day, I come in, right? I take my shower, right? I get my blow dryer, my afro pick, and I pick out my afro. I grab my AWOL bag, and I get in my 1973 Ford Pinto, and I drive through the company area, and I said to the fellas, "Who laughing now? I'll see y'all suckers next week, right? If you're willing to do what other people will not do." My daddy told me that you can go where other people cannot go. And then he said, "Boy, if you play now, you're going to have to pay later. But if you pay now, you can play later." So in addition to being a retired Brigadier General from the North Carolina National Guard, in addition to being a retired banker from First Citizens Bank, in addition to being retired from the North Carolina as a juvenile justice for North Carolina, in addition to being an author of a book, I'm also an artist, because now I'm drawing some checks. If you play now, you're going to have to pay later. But if you pay now, you can play later. So now for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm grown. I can do basically what I want to do, right? I don't have to worry about nobody firing me. And I don't have to worry about nobody interrupting my income streams. So for the first time, as a man of color, I can be me. In the Army and in corporate America, I couldn't be me. I had to look like, act like, think like, talk like people other than myself, because I had to assimilate. Could not integrate. I had to assimilate to be successful. But now I can be me for the first time in my life. That's a great feeling. Anyway, then the last thing he told me, he said, "Boy, your word is one thing that you give and you keep at the same time." He said, "There's not many things in life you can give and keep at the same time, but your word is. So when you give your word, you make sure you keep it, because somebody is always eating off your tree. So you make sure that you're producing good fruit." He said, if you give your word and you keep your word, he said, you walk in integrity. And when you walk in integrity, my daddy told me that success would come after me. The words of a 7th grade educated sharecropper that got his wisdom from God, because that's where wisdom comes from. Wisdom comes from God, right? And he shared that with me in that truck. And so when I became the Commissioner of Juvenile Justice for the state of North Carolina, I went around to every youth development center. I went around to every youth detention center. And I went to several of the juvie courts. And this is what I discovered. 67% of the children in those facilities are children of color. They look like me. But 90% of the children in those facilities don't know who their daddy is or have a relationship with their father. That is a major problem that we have in our community. Right? The underlying theme of that book that I wrote, Sharecropper's Wisdom, Growing Today's Leaders the Old-Fashioned Way, is this. Great things happen when a father, not a baby maker, but a father, speaks into the life of his children, and they listen and they obey, because that is what I attribute to the success that I had in my life. I listened to that sharecropper daddy of mine. And so when I was promoted to Brigadier General at the state capitol there in Raleigh, and I was coming back home, I was having a little conversation with the big guy. And he said to me, "JR, you didn't get qualified to be a general when they sent your paperwork in to the Department of the Army." He said, "You became qualified to be a general when you was down there in your daddy tobacco field, priming backer for your daddy, being obedient to your father, just like King David was down there keeping his sheep." And when the man of God came to his father, Jesse, he said, "Jesse, bring me all your boys before me. I'm here to pronounce the next king of Israel." And Jesse brought all his boys. And the man of God looked at him and said, ain't none of these qualified. Don't you have somebody else? He said, oh, I got little David. He down there keeping my sheep. He said, bring him. And he looked on his countenance. And he said, that's the one. That's qualified. You get qualified when ain't nobody looking at you. When you're just being obedient to those in authority over you with a good attitude. That's what gets you promoted, what I've learned in my life. So that's what I'm here to share with you today, and I hope you maybe got something out of something that I said today. And so I'm going to leave with this little paraphrase from this book entitled The Richest Man in Babylon. One of the first books I read when I came to the banking industry, The Richest Man in Babylon. It says something to this effect. He said, a bag heavy with gold, or a book full of wisdom. If given the choice, which would you choose? He said it is sad to say that the sons and daughters of man will refuse the wisdom, thereby losing the gold. I don't have a bag full of gold, but I got a book full of wisdom, Sharecropper's wisdom. And if you like, grab a copy on the way out. And if you would really like to become a sharecropper like me, buy one for yourself, and then buy one for a young man or woman that might not have a daddy in their life like I had in mine. And maybe something in that book will help them to become the man or woman that God has ordained them to be. Thank you for allowing me to be here today.